Hey again, everyone. It's Rob Ryder, and it's Saturday, May 14th, 2022. Today, signs of the devil, maybe them Esquires, are found in the details. You want to watch the system work, right? The paper don't lie. Look at the paper. It'll show you what they're doing. Everything that these Esquires do, right? There's a documentary record to show that it was done by error or omission. And if there's an error and it's pointed out and you don't fix it and it becomes an omission, well, you're just guilty of an omission, which is, malfeasance or pick any of the other things it could be. But it's bad faith for sure. So what can we do about it? Well, that's what I'm going to try to show in this video. But we're going to look at a few of these different situations, like an indictment that's wrong, like a ticket that's wrong, and then like a car contract for a car loan, right? A used car that's wrong. And that maybe the thing to do with these things that are wrong is to take the wrongdoer to small claims court under the Consumer Protection Act, which is specifically allowed to be tried in small claims. And I'm going to show you where all this stuff comes from. I'm just giving you a little idea where I'm headed with this today because, it's pretty interesting. And to find out if it's going to work, it's going to take people who have these things to go try the things that I'm talking about, because I don't have a car loan, right? I don't have a traffic ticket. So, but I am trying other things in small claims court, which, we'll get into at some other point. Let's just, let's get into this a little bit. All right, so give me just a second. Hang on, please. But first, hey, if you could help keep the lights on, any donation is always greatly appreciated. My PayPal account is Rob Ryder, ROBBRYDER, at AOL.com. Or you can put it in the mail to Robert Allen Rutluski, 10955 14 Mile Road, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. If you want to pay with a credit card, you can send an email to me at Court of Record and say, hey, Rob, send me an invoice through PayPal for X number of dollars. You put in the number for the X, and then I can do that, and you can pay with a credit card. You don't have to have a PayPal account. So, again, if you can, it's wonderful. I know it's tough times for everybody, so, just have to be one of the everybody's. All right, hang on again. And so, if you went to my site on YouTube, which is Rob Ryder with 3 B's, ROBBBRYDER, and went under videos and went back to Esquires mock, the Lord and his golden rule, I was talking about a felony case in Ohio against a veteran who, his sister had sent me his paperwork and I'm looking at it, and we're still working on this stuff. And now that I have all the documents, I want to show you what I've actually found, right? So what we found in his case, if we went to look at the indictment, which is what this is all about, right? So at some point, if you're going to be tried for a felony, got to be by indictment. Apparently, unless you agree to an information or something like that. Yada, yada. So anyways, this is the indictment that is supposed to be against Jerry, right? It says State of Ohio, Gerald R. Potts, indictments, got case number in the Common Pleas Court. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but this is what they used, right? Then it's got a count 1 and got a count 2, true bill, signed, and that was it. This is the charging document by which a man's been held in jail for a year and a half and never been to trial because this indictment was supposed to have been filed. Well, if you compare this indictment to what the Ohio Code says it's supposed to have, right, you can see that, there's not quite the same. Right? An indictment may be substantially in the following form. Right? The State of Ohio, SS County. Well, let's go back and look at this. Is that what that said? No, it just said State of Ohio. And it didn't say SS County. It said versus Gerald R. Potts, the defendant. Well, that isn't what is supposed to be on a frickin' according to the Ohio Revised Code. Well, that doesn't go on a frickin' indictment. This goes on an indictment, right? And this is right out of the Constitution, that the process is supposed to be in the name of the state of Ohio. So there it is. I mean, this is proper, and it should be, in his case, Medina County. But when you look at the indictment, that isn't what's on here. There's nothing about the Medina County up here. There's nothing about this, this SS. This is like a jurisdictional or venue describer or something like that, where the shit's happening at. What venue it is. And it's not on there. And that should be in the year blank, right? The jurors, grand jury, yada, yada, on their oaths. In the name and authority by the state of Ohio, do find and present somebody on the day of, right? Yada, yada. Well, as we'll see, that isn't quite what they did here. And so the easiest thing to see now is what I'm trying to do in this particular case, is we put in a petition for judicial review. Now, when I say we, I'm talking to his sister, who's trying to do something. But because they've already assigned an attorney to him, right, you can't put paperwork in for him directly to the court. It has to go through the attorney. All right, so we just sent him something like this, that, that this is what's wrong and what he needs to take a look at. So the defendant petitions for judicial review of the indictment used as the charging instrument in this proceeding, as its form is unlawful and violates the defendant's constitutional protections. The form of the indictment submitted in this proceeding does not conform to Ohio Revised Code section 2941.06, form of indictment, Exhibit 1. The form of indictment submitted has the following irregularities. Exhibit 1 has a venue statement, right? State of Ohio, SS, name of the county. The document filed in the indictment does not identify the venue. No grand jury was assembled in the named county in accordance with law. The document filed as an indictment has a plaintiff's state of Ohio and a John Doe pseudonym, right? Gerald R. Potts, because that's really not Gerald Ray Potts' full legal name. That's a pseudonym. Defendant, which does not conform to the Ohio Revised Code. Article 4 of the Ohio Constitution mandates in subsection 20 that the style of process shall be the state of Ohio. The document filed as an indictment offends the Ohio Constitution mandate. A legal statement in the year in Exhibit 1, which is in the year blank required by the Ohio Revised Code, does not exist in the document filed as an indictment, and the exhibit contains the following fill in the blank statement, right, which is day of, right? Exhibit 1 has a date certain on the day of, that is, that the accused committed some statutory violation or breach of peace. The charging instrument submitted in this proceeding as an indictment does not have a date certain and instead uses or states on or about, making it an impossibility to defend. There is no legal definition for on or about. The charging instrument filed as an indictment in this proceeding simulates a legal process under color of law and offends the Constitution of the United States and Ohio. Laws of the United States, the Revised Code of Ohio, and victimizes Gerald Ray Potts, who must be liberated from his false imprisonment immediately. So, in other words, what they're calling an indictment doesn't fit the criteria of what an indictment is according to the Ohio Revised Statute. Well, come to find out then, one of the things that you could do is, according to the Constitution, is ask for a bill of indictment if you're being tried by a bill of particulars if you're being tried by an indictment. And so it took forever for Sandy to get this, which is Jerry's brother or sister. But, once you got it, it says Medina Court of Common Pleas. Right now, Medina is the county. Well, I thought this was the state of Ohio Court of Common Pleas, Medina County Division or something. But no, they say it's the Medina Court of Common Pleas. Well, something like that could be nothing more than a municipal court. It's not a state court. It's not a federal court. What is it? And it's not the state of Ohio like we just saw it's supposed to say. It says state of Ohio. And it said that there was supposed to be a summons and that he violated these particular sections, although this isn't a proper citation of a Ohio revised statute, right? But and under the laws, the assistant prosecutor says further that under the laws governing indictments and bill of particulars, without ever mentioning what they are, the assistant prosecutor is not required to disclose through a bill of particular any other evidentiary matters requested in the defendant's motion for a bill of particulars. But it wasn't signed by anybody. Right? And there's the service is blank. So they just gave, sandy paper that has no fucking legal value and said, here's your bill of particulars. Coming from this place called the Medina Court of Common Pleas, which is not a state court. We got a problem here, Houston. We need something to happen. And then you read here, it says indictment with summons. Well, they don't ever summons you to an indictment hearing. So but you can see what would happen if they've said they've issued a summons and you didn't appear. Well, then they can say you're in contempt of court for violating your summons. And if they can get you in civil contempt of court, they can hold you for the rest of your life. And everything else is just a story. Right? But they're going to say that you were under contempt of court. You never cleared your contempt. Now, he doesn't need to clear his contempt because this is a fucking simulated legal process under color of law. And these people should all be rounded up, put in a FEMA camp. And if we can ever get it figured out, maybe that's what will happen to them. Right? But I'm just showing you that if you know anybody that's in jail in Ohio for a felony, then this same thing happened to them because, this is what the law says is supposed to be on the indictment. And this is what the indictment says. Right? In the Common Pleas Court of Medina County, Ohio. No, it's the Ohio Common Pleas Court, Medina County. There's only one Common Pleas Court in Ohio. Right? Where they're trying to make this sound like there's one in every county or however they want to break it down. And they do the same thing in Michigan with the district courts. There's one district court. There's a seal that says the District Court of the State of Michigan. But when you look at each district for the name of the court, like for me, it's the 63rd District Court. Well, that isn't right. I mean, I'm in the 63rd Judicial District of the one District Court of the State of Michigan. But that isn't what the website is. That's not what's on the paperwork they give you. It's, Esquires have created this parallel system in the United States of America, the democracy, that has nothing to do with the United States, which Ohio is one of. Right? And so they're not following anything under the Ohio Constitution. They're not following the Constitution of the United States. They're usurpers who have invaded the United States, created a private society, and then, by coercion, hook, crook, scheme, whatever, they got us all to be subject to their jurisdiction in the United States of America, aka the democracy. But it's not the United States that's spoken of in the Constitution. And none of these people have taken the oath to satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution, which, just so we can say we looked at it, is right here. Very first law passed after ratification of the Constitution said that the oath or affirmation required by the 6th article of the Constitution of the United States shall be administered in the form following, which means, hey, you got to do it just like it shows here, to wit, I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm I will support the Constitution of the United States. Well, if you're not going to enforce this law, which is the first law passed after ratification of the Constitution, then why would anybody follow any of your laws? Right? So, now this includes state officers because, they're covered in the 6th article. But just to make sure that nobody can say they didn't know, when they made the United States Code and Title IV is for the states, they put in here that every member of the state legislature and every executive and judicial officer of a state shall, before he proceeds to execute the duties of his office, when does he have to do this? Before he proceeds to execute the duties of his office, take an oath in the following form. I state your name, solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States. My gosh, that's the same thing again. And then it goes on to say that, he has to do it for the person who can administer an oath in the state, like a notary public. but they have to have a record or certificate. That's the proof that they did it. If they don't have a record or certificate to certify that they took the oath, then the dude didn't take the oath, and therefore he's not a state judge, or he's not a county commissioner, or he's not a mayor, or he's not the governor, or he's not a state legislator. None of these people. Right? They didn't take this oath. They're not a fucking state officer. And they have no authority. So, right now, all you can do is take the truth of the Pharisee and say, hey, dude, if you don't have this oath, you got no authority. It doesn't matter what they say. No, this is what the law says, brother. Are you telling me we don't follow the laws of the United States in Ohio? Or wherever you are, right? No. We're going to follow the Constitution. Which says, it says a lot of good things in the 6th article, by the way. Right, well, here's where it says, senators, representatives before mentioned, and members of several state legislatures and all executive judicial officers, both the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required. So if these people are taking an oath that says, so help me God, well, then that's not a constitutional oath. Well, that's the kind of oath they take. And when they take it, they don't take it in their full legal name, AB. They put middle initial. They use a pseudonym. Their John Doe pseudonym, not their full legal name. Also in the 6th article, it says the Constitution and laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution, laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So they have to enforce 4 USC 101. It's really just that simple. But they're not. And I can't make them do it. I can just say, hey, you got to do it. I don't have any power. I got all the freaking facts, the knowledge, but I don't have the power, right? That comes to the military. They got the guns. Or, maybe through the court system a different way than the way we've been using it, which is something we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. So, if you got a loved one, I don't really care what state you're in, and they're being held in court for a felony charge or a misdemeanor charge, it doesn't fucking matter. They don't do any of this stuff right. Everything that's done is done with errors and omissions. And, until we wisen up and call them on it, well, they're going to continue to do it. They don't have any plans to stop it. They're working for the devil. Right? They took the devil's deal, and there they go. Okay. Let me regroup again. Hang on a second. Just because they go together so well, I want to make sure I pointed this out, right? This is Article 4, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republic in form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or executive, where the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence. Right? A republic in form of government. Didn't say anything about a fucking democracy. Right? The United States is a union made up of these republics that are going to be governed by Republican form of government, which the definition of, one of them that I found, I said, well, that's one I like, is, right, it's written rules or written laws enforced by officers that were elected or appointed. Well, for that to happen, they would have had to take the oath to satisfy the 6th article, or they're not the right people. So they haven't. This is the truth. They haven't. Therefore, the United States is not guaranteeing to the states a Republican form of government. We don't have one. And the Esquires made sure of that by making sure nobody takes an oath of office. Funny how that works. Alrighty. So that example was a felony. Let's look at something a little more mundane, like a traffic ticket. Or as they call them in the state of Michigan, a uniform law citation. Which, if we just read what it says, well, this happened in the city of Ferndale, apparently. Somebody with this driver license number, their information, and it says that they violated a local ordinance within the city of Ferndale, which is in the county of Oakland. And it went on to say that these are misdemeanors. Well, one was a misdemeanor, and one's a C/something, which who knows what the hell that is. Right? Authorization pending, ordinance something. Well, that's not checked, but these numbers here, see where it says 257,904. If you were to put MCL, Michigan compiled law, in front of that, and so MCL 257,904, well, that would take you to a Michigan law. Same with this 3281. Right? Those are really the numberings of a Michigan compiled law, although it's not a proper citation of one. And it's not an ordinance of one, because if it was an ordinance using the Michigan compiled law as an ordinance, it would have to have MCL 357,904, so we would know what the hell it is, or it has to be written in an ordinance book as 257,904. So where's your ordinance book, city, and show me where it's in there. But hey, they're not checked anyways, right? But they have these other ones. It's got 3,200 and 3,100. Well, apparently then these are some kind of local ordinance of the city of Ferndale. And so you should be able to go to the city of Ferndale and say, clerk, I want to see your ordinance book, and you show me where these ordinances are in there. Well, they're not going to be able to, because they're not in there. It's really not what's happening. Then we go down to offense codes, and, well, charge one doesn't have any code, and 2 has got this 3,100, right? So we didn't bring 3,200 down for some reason. But we're going to say no proof of insurance has a $140 fine, apparently. It's got it written in there. So 3,100. So apparently 3,100 is an ordinance somewhere in the city of Ferndale, or it's not. But if you're going to say that you're charged for a local ordinance, then what are you charging me for if these aren't in there? Where is this a local ordinance of? Well, you go down further and then check if appropriate. Damage to property, vehicle impounded. No, none of that. Appearance certificate. No. Local court bond. No. Right, none. Nothing. So, by this document, there's no reason to go to court. They didn't sign check appearance ticket. You got to show up for an appearance. It says none. Right, but then they continue on. See date below. Appearance date on or before within 10 days. Hearing date. Right, there's nothing there. Doesn't say to contact the court. Then it goes on to say, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen in the 43rd District Court of Ferndale. Well, again, we don't have municipal courts in Michigan. We have the district court. And so this is not the District Court of Michigan they're speaking of. This is some private fucking court that's been set up that's pretended to be the Court of Michigan. And this is the pretended address of the 43rd District Court, Ferndale. Right? So this court is not a court contemplated by the Constitution of Michigan or by the Michigan legislature. Yet that's where they want you to go when you show up, because you're going to say, I got to go to court. Doesn't matter they click none. If you didn't know what this was about, you would just say, well, I got to go to court, got to be there on this day, da-da-da, and that's what the victim did. And then I got this little check. I served a copy of the civil infraction complaint on the defendant. Well, I thought there's supposed to be some motor vehicle infractions. But no, that's not what this is. We're not saying it was a motor vehicle, have anything to do with driving. No, it's a civil infraction of some kind. Right? So that's a whole different Ricky Lake show. And it was done by somebody whose officer's name is Officer T. Lamos, which of course is nobody's name. This hasn't been done properly. That's not who it is. And the people that did it's called the Ferndale PD. Well, Ferndale has a police department. I mean, there's room to put Ferndale Police Department in there. But they chose to put Ferndale PD. Right? And so, this ticket's got all sorts of things wrong with it. Now, where did this happen? Right? Where did it all say it happened at? Well, it said it happened in the city of Ferndale. Okay. So what I'm thinking of doing, I'm going to help this lady here if she wants to do it, is take the city of Ferndale to small claims court and say that the services they're providing violate the Michigan's Consumer Protection Act, which says Well, first of all, just to show where it comes from, because in Michigan, right, this is the Small Claims Division. Actions for fraud, right, that intentional tort shall not be instituted in small claims court. Did you know that fraud's not a crime? It's a tort. That's interesting. It's not criminal, right? So this would tell you, well, you couldn't do it, and then it says, well, except for, and it gives two caveats, and one of them is the Michigan Consumer Protection Act. And in the Consumer Protection Act, that anything that falls under 3, you could bring somebody to court for. So unfair, unconscionable, or deceptive methods, acts, or practices to conduct in conduct of trade or commerce, rules, applicability, sections, unfair, unconscionable, deceptive methods, acts, or practices in the conduct of trade or commerce are unlawful and as defined as follows: causing a probability of confusion or misunderstanding as to the source, sponsorship, approval, or certification of goods or services. Well, that's what the city's supposed to be offering you, is services. Right? So there may be a misunderstanding, because I can go look online and say, well, look, there's a thing called the Ferndale Police Department. All right, there it is, Ferndale Police Department. But that isn't the name on the ticket. Right? I mean, doesn't say that. It says Ferndale PD. No idea who it is. Now, they have these things called agency ORIs, and which is, and that has a name. I actually found it one time. I'm forgetting what it is. But if anybody knows how to find the addresses for an ORI, please tell me. Send me an email, right to courtofrecord@aol.com, to find out just exactly who the Ferndale PD is, right? Because this is their ORI number, MI 6339400. So they're the ones that issued the ticket. Well, that's not the same as the Ferndale Police Department, which is, who the city of Ferndale is supposed to have out giving out tickets. So there seems to be some kind of confusion. I say it's a consumer protection confusion, and I'm going to blame the city. I may even just go right and blame the mayor, because the mayor is really responsible for everything. He's the conservator of the peace in the city. And take his ass to small claims court for violation of this particular section. So actually it'd be the city you'd take, and the mayor should be the one that shows up to, he's the legal representative of the city. And that would get the guy's attention. That's my point. Look, I just want him to go do the right thing and say, look, you're the mayor. Go make this shit go away. Don't ever do it again, or you're going to have to start putting people in jail. And that's how these fuckers will stop doing this shit. But because it's a service, it falls under goods or services, and, try to take them to small claims court. So yeah, take the city of Ferndale to small claims court for violation of Section 3 of this act, and then they have to come answer. If they don't come answer, well, then they default. Right? Because the small claims court, an interesting thing is, this is a court of equity. It's in personam jurisdiction. All the other courts you go to, you have to be represented by an attorney. So even if you go to court representing yourself, you're pro se, which is not the same as being yourself. It's not pro per. Or in personam is probably the proper thing, where you show up in your own name, representing yourself, right? Full liability, yada yada yada. And an interesting thing about this Consumer Protection Act, since we're on it real quick, because this would apply to anything now, because this won't be the only thing I'm going to try to do this with. I say you can do the same thing with, if you have a mortgage that's been filed in the official records of the county, which anybody who has a house, there is, or let's say you have a car loan, because those documents are deceptive, right? For that mortgage to have any legal value, the lender would have had to have lent you money. And for the lender to have lent you money, there would have to be a contract that both you and the lender sign. It's called a bilateral business contract. Well, the fucker doesn't exist. Never happened. It's all a big story. So you just call them in and say, look, you're going to have to come in and explain this in the court. prove that this mortgage can be in the official records because there's an underlying loan, which is evidence of, is not the, they want to say the evidence is the note that you gave them. Well, that's fine. They say that. No, the evidence of a loan is when there's a contract signed by both parties. And if there ain't one of those, then there's no loan. And a judge would know that. That's just, nobody ever brings this shit up in court. Right? But, somebody told me before that they had a contract dispute of some kind. And so when they went to court, they brought a library book and they're reading this chapter out of the book. And the judge says, can I see that, please? And they hand it to him. And the judge looks, well, what do you have to say, plaintiff? And case dismissed. Right? Because the book came out of the library, had a seal in the front. It was a public record that says, this is what it takes for this particular, whatever the little action was to happen. Well, in there, one of the things that has to happen is any kind of business contract, both parties have to sign a contract. And the lender, the bank, has never signed anything with anybody, ever. Well, I won't go that far, but certainly not with this stuff. Right? When you get a mortgage or you get a car loan, you don't sign out a contract with a bank. So, yeah, that's the idea, is to take them to small claims court. Because I think it's like $1,000 fine for this. I had to go back and find, so basically your damage is $1,000. But in small claims court, they can give you cost, right? And cost is everything else you could have had along with the fine. So like an occurrence of an intentional tort is covered by their liability insurance and covers it for $1 million or $2 million or whatever it is. Well, okay, it's the occurrence of a tort. You get a judgment. I want my $1 million, right? And the judge can give it to you. Hang on a second here again. And this is like huge, right? This is in subsection 11, right? Action by person for declaratory judgment, injunction, or actual damages. Right? Whether or not a person seeks damages or has an adequate remedy at law, a person may bring an action to do either of the following, either or both of the following. Right? Obtain a declaratory judgment that the method, act, or practice is unlawful under Section 3. That's all that you were looking for. Right? If you can get a declaratory judgment that what somebody did is unlawful, well, you're on your way to getting a remedy. And join in accordance with the principles of equity, which, if it's principles of equity, that makes this a court of equity, a person who is engaging or is about to engage in a method, act, practice that is unlawful under Section 3. In other words, to get an injunction to stop them from doing it. Except in class action, a person who suffers a loss result of violates this act may bring an action to recover actual damages of $250. So there's the amount. You have to have a sum certain for your damages to put into the form to say this is what you're claiming for damages. But if you get the judgment, you can get the costs that go with the confirmed judgment of the violation. And cost has its own definition. In fact, let me go get it. Hang on a second. First, before I go get costs, I want to show fraud real quick, right? That it says right in here, fraud or to defraud is a tort, unlawfully, designedly, and knowingly to appropriate the party of another without a criminal intent. It's a tort. It's not a crime. So, it's not tried criminally. It's tried civilly. It's just that most intentional torts you can't try in small claims except for fraud caused by something under the Consumer Protection Act, which is all goods and services. Okay, and now let's go look at cost. Right? Cost. The expenses of a suit or an action which may be recovered by law from the losing party. There you go. Right, so again, we're going to blame the city. City of Ferndale, it's your fault. This shit's happening in your jurisdiction. Right, there's somebody running around in a car claiming to be the Ferndale Police Department, or Ferndale PD handing out simulated legal processes under color of law, telling people to appear at some fucking court that doesn't exist. Right? All these courts were abolished in Michigan. Right? Courts abolished effective January 1st, 1969. Excuse me. The following courts are abolished except as provided in some other section. Justice of the Peace, Circuit Court Commissioners, municipal courts, police courts, recorders courts, yada, yada, yada. Right? And they were all replaced in Michigan by the district court. So I don't have to prove who they are. They have to prove who they are. Right? I'm not going to argue with them. I'll take their fucking ass to court, and you can prove it in court. Bring in your evidence to prove that, that court's a legitimate court that somebody has to go answer to. Municipal courts, abolition function of a district court, judges, transfer cases. It's all been taken care of. There are no municipal courts anymore. Sorry, can't do it. And actually in this Ferndale, so one other thing you could do is, for people that are trying to figure this out for yourselves, this is what you do, right? You go to, in this case, City of Ferndale. When there's a war going on, the internet doesn't work quite as good. City of Ferndale Municipal Code. Right? So every city's got a municipal code, and they're usually found, like in this case, City Charter, Court of Ordinances. It was Muni Code is a big one for all these different cities to have a municipal code. Right, so here is this, and if we look for, where was Justice Court? Right, so they had this thing called, it's chapter, what would that be, 18, Justice Courts, and they've been repealed. Right, there is no Justice Court anymore. So whatever they may have had is no longer there. All they have now, or should have, is a district court of a judicial district of the district court for the state of Michigan. And that isn't what the name. That's not the name on the ticket. So, I'm not going to figure it out. They can come to court and explain it. Come on, Mayor. We'll see you in court. Yeah, you can take City Hall to court. Sure you can. Okay, so that was, the legal side of things, or let's say dealing with the government side, right? Where one was a felony, the other one was a misdemeanor, traffic ticket, civil infraction, whatever that would be, which, those are services. Well, this here is to do with a loan for a car, right? For a used car on a document they call a retail installment contract, which is from Credit Acceptance Corporation. Okay? Well, before we read it, what is a retail installment contract? It's always good to look at your definitions. Retail installment contract is created when a customer agrees to buy goods through installment payments. Retail installment contracts are closed-ended transactions for purposes of truth in lending. For example, a consumer enters into a retail installment contract when she purchases an appliance on an installment plan or a car with a loan that has a repayment plan that fixes the number of amounts of the payments. But it's not the loan agreement, right? It's the contract that says you'll buy it under those conditions. Now you got to go get a loan. So, this isn't showing that you have a loan. This is just showing what you agreed to buy. It's almost like the purchase agreement for real estate. It's not the mortgage, right? This is the contract for the goods, but not the contract for the financing of the goods. That would come separately under a thing called a consumer credit contract, right? Which is any instrument which evidences and embodies a debt arising from a purchase, money, loan transaction, or a finance sale as defined by these other ones. Well, in those cases, there would be a fucking contract between the person borrowing the money and the person lending the money. But it's not a retail installment contract, right? It's a consumer credit contract. Well, that isn't what this thing calls itself. However, we'll see that's what it calls itself, a real estate installment contract, but it also calls itself a credit, a consumer credit contract. So let's just go through it a little bit at a time, right? So if you bought a car, you probably have one of these, and I'm sure it's the same for new financing. Also, this just happened to be a used car. But we can see that under this resale installment contract, that's what it says here. This is not in the box, right? And it's whatever you're doing is covered by truth and lending disclosures below. We got these truth and lending disclosures here. Well, come to find out, these other things are also, where like this notice, right? These are notices that have to be in certain things. And it says that this has an arbitration clause. And it's funny, it says Mississippi Credit Acceptance Corporation, which doesn't seem to exist. I wasn't able to find it. But this Credit Acceptance Corporation does exist. It's actually someplace here in Michigan. Cash price, finance charge, certificate of title showing our security interest. Okay. So you could read through all this and, worry about all the little things that it says. But one of the things it did say was that, well, let's just go. It says it has this arbitration clause, right, where disputes have to be arbitrated. But it goes on to say, notwithstanding the foregoing, dispute does not include any individual action brought by you in a small claims court of your state's equivalent court, unless such action is transferred, removed, or appealed to a different court. So you don't have to go to arbitration first. You can take it in a small claims court, which is what I'm saying to do, $250 damages, because this contract is misleading. One of the other things it says is you must make all future payments to Credit Acceptance Corporation at this address. Okay, well, is that where the payments are going to? Because on the certificate of title, which they won't let this lady have a copy of hers, and they say, no, you can't have one. Right? But on the certificate of title, it has on there the name and address of the first lien holder. Right? So that's the place you're supposed to be sending your payments to. If you're sending it any place else, well, that's not the first lien holder, because the first lien holder is on the certificate of title, and it says on the certificate of title that that document is prima facie evidence. So that's where you need to be sending your checks to. And if you're not, well, then, you're not sent to the right place. And I'm sure that that's what's happening. So past the thing they called it's a 5-page document for this contract we'll get back to in a second. Then there's this other page where Credit Acceptance Corporation Disclosure Form says that unless I enter into a contract with a third-party vendor to remit my payments under contract to Credit Acceptance on my behalf, I understand that Credit Acceptance will be sending me a payment book or statement that will be used by me to make my payments under the contract to Credit Acceptance. Okay, well, did you enter a contract with somebody else to remit payments for you to Credit Acceptance? If so, well, where's the contract? And if not, well, where's the payment book? And if you got a payment book, well, what's the address in the payment book? Because on another page it said, where to send the checks to. Right. I further acknowledge if I have enrolled in an electronic payment program, my payments will be automatically withdrawn from my bank account. Well, that's what they would do. right? You must make all future payments to, this is where you have to send this address, Credit Acceptance Corporation, that address, or you're not sending your payments according to this contract to the proper authority. Now, the thing is, again, that at the top of the document, it says it's a retail installment contract. Retail installment contract. Okay, well, that's a particular thing. We just looked at it. It's got a particular definition. But then it goes on to say, notice, any holder of this consumer credit contract is subject to all claims and defenses which the debtor could assert against the seller of goods and services obtained pursuant to hereto or with the proceeds hereof. Recovery hereunder by the debtor shall not exceed amounts paid by the debtor hereunder. So I'm saying, well, if you've been making payments to the wrong address, you can get your fucking money back. Right? You just have to say, hey, this says two things. It says it's a retail installment contract, and it's a consumer credit contract. Can't be both. Can only be one or the other. And let me pull this law up again real quick. Right, so I mean, there's all sorts of gobbledygook on here and shits in boxes, and it can be quite confusing. But what I found is, see, it's got this notice here, and so I, copied and pasted the notice to find out what this was all about, and come to find out that this notice is required by 16 Code of Federal Regulations, subsection 433.2, preservation of consumers' claims and defenses, unfair or deceptive acts or practices, which is exactly what's things that are covered by the Michigan Consumer Protection Act, or whatever your state's Protection Act is, or whatever the Federal Protection Act is. It's what's protected. So that notice has something to do with preserving the consumer's claims, and it says preservation of consumers' claims and defenses, unfair or deceptive acts and practices in connection with any sale or lease of goods or services to consumers in or affecting commerce as commerce is defined in the Federal Trade Commission Act is an unfair or deceptive act or practice within the meaning of Section 5 of that act for the seller directly or indirectly to take or receive consumer credit contract which fails to contain the following provision in at least 10-point boldface type. Right? Then it has this notice. Right? Or to have this notice. Well, if we look at the notice that was on the document, it's this one, which makes it a consumer credit contract. If it was B, it would be acceptance full or partial payment for such sale or lease, proceeds of any purchase for a purchase money loan. Unless any consumer credit contract made in connection with such purposes loan contains the following provision in at least 10 points. So one says obtained pursuant hereto or with the proceeds hereof. And the other one says obtained with the proceeds hereof. It doesn't say pursuant hereto. Well, mine says pursuant hereto, or mine, right, our victims. Pursuant hereto, right, which means if just looking at what it means, match them up. Well, that means it falls under A. That's good enough for me. That makes it a consumer credit contract. So it's not what it says it is at the top of the document, right? A retail installment contract. It's instead a consumer credit contract, and we saw that the definition of a consumer credit contract is, let me find it again, is any instrument which evidences or embodies a debt arising from a purchase money loan. So it's not the purchase money loan transaction contract. It's just an instrument to show that one exists. But there isn't one because you never signed a contract with the frickin' people to borrow any money. There's no contract between you and a bank to borrow money to buy the car. But because they have this thing that has the notice and they can say, well, this is a consumer credit contract, or that's how they're going to treat it, even though that isn't what it says at the top, which is just the title of something, not the substance of it. Right? The substance of it says it's a consumer credit contract, so they're using it as evidence that there's a debt owed by you from a purchase money loan, even though there's no freaking contract. So take in the small claims court and say, bring in the purchase money loan contract. Or there is no contract. It's a deceptive practice. I want my money back. And I'll take any cost you can give me, Judge. See what I'm talking about? I mean, this just falls so neatly into the definition of what you can do in the small claims court. Right, and this, because all you have to do is find something under 3 that you could say, well, I'm using that as mine. I'm going to, and that's what I'm going to bring him to court on. Now, if you're wrong, well, then you're going to lose, right? But you can find something here to use, like causing a probability of confusion or misunderstanding as to the source, sponsorship, approval, or certification of goods and services. Well, if you call the document one thing, but it's actually another, I would say that there's a chance of confusion or misunderstanding. And, I want a declaratory judgment to that effect, which was down here under 11. Right? Whether or not a person seeks damages or has an adequate remedy at law. Well, we're not at law now. I mean, we're at equity. That's what they're saying. Okay? We're not at law. We're at rec. If you had a remedy at law, that would be in a different court. You're here. So whether you have one there or not, a person may bring an action to do either the following or both. Obtain a declaratory judgment that the method or act or practice is unlawful under Section 3. Enjoin, which is the same as saying, put in a injunction against somebody in accordance with the principles of equity for engaging or about to engage in a method, act, or practice that is unlawful under Section 3. And so I'm saying that's what you can do with a traffic ticket. You can say, hey, you got to stop prosecuting this thing till we figure out if there's been a deceptive practice going on here. So, hey, that's what I wanted to show you. Okay, now for myself, I'm going to use it for one other thing because, that's these people, that's for having an issue with a mortgage, car loan, or whatever. But I have an issue with the frickin' government. And I say my answer is through the American Legion or a similar chapter or Title 36 federal corporation that have these federal charters. And that the problem is that if you go down here and look at their powers, I mean, let's look at what they're supposed to. What is the purpose of the American Legion? To uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. Right? To promote peace and goodwill. Yada, yada, yada. Well, what are its powers to do it? Any act necessary or proper to carry out the purpose of the corporation to protect and defend the Constitution. It can do whatever it requires. Now, because this is a federal corporation, it's actually the United States. I'll show you that in a second. But let's get to the thing that they've done wrong. See, and this is the same for any of these entities like this, these Title 36 patriotic associations, like the VFW, the American Disabled Vets, or Disabled American Vets. Yeah, there's a whole list of them. Right? They haven't done this. As a condition to exercise any power or privilege granted by this chapter, granted by Congress to the American Legion, but there's only one condition. The corporation shall file with the Secretary of State or other designated official of each state the name and address of an agent in that state on whom legal process or demands against the corporation may be served. And they haven't done it. Right? They've failed to file their own charter and do what this section requires, and so they can't offer the services that they should be able to offer because they didn't file the charter. Well, then I say that's a deceptive practice, and that they should be able to be brought to the small claims court. So I'm bringing the American Legion to small claims court. Now, if you've been into this truth movement for any time, I'm sure that you've been told that the United States is a federal corporation, right? And then they quote this Title 28 United States Code, Section 3002 definitions, number 15, by the way. And you go down there where it says United States means a federal corporation, an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States, or an instrumentality of the United States. So the United States isn't a federal corporation only, or the United States isn't even a federal corporation, but a federal corporation is the United States, as is an agency, a department, a commission, a board, or other entity of the United States, or an instrumentality of the United States. Those are the United States. The federal corporations, like the American Legion, are the United States. They have the same authority as an agency, department, commission, any of these other things of the United States. The difference is that it's, for like a veteran, it's our window into the jurisdiction of the United States to point out that these other agencies, departments, commissions aren't doing what they're fucking supposed to do. Right? We can be the United States as a properly formed corporation, which is why it's so important for them to make sure that we don't do this. Right? If we can't do one simple step and get the corporation properly its agent with the Secretary of State, then you shouldn't have any power anyways. So this is what we need to get fixed. But if we had that fixed, because like the American Legion, they got a gold fringe flag, brothers and sisters. They are the United States, right? They're in the military jurisdiction of the United States. And I say it's really how veterans are supposed to be running this civilian as the civil authority in the United States, because the United States is at war, has been since 1863. We're under martial law, since 1863. And veterans have a document that says that, are honorable and faithful service. Well, there ain't anybody else, any other class of people that has that. We're the only ones. Well, then, we should be running the show. And the way they keep us from doing it is making sure that our window into the system is not functioning because we simply didn't file with the Secretary of State who our agent is. And so I don't think myself as a member could do that. That has to come from above. And so we're going to find out. Like I said, I'll bring in the small claims court and see what they have to say. Deceptive practices. You say that you're the American Legion, but you don't have your fucking paperwork in with the Secretary of State, so you're really not the American Legion. You're just impersonating. But if they would be the American Legion, then they have all the power to do this. They have the power, right, to carry out the purpose of the corporation. And its number one purpose is to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. Well, then we could make all these fucktards that didn't take their oath of office go take an oath of office. Right? We would have some power. So that's what I'm working on. So yeah, if you're interested in trying something like this, please look at what I'm talking about, because I can't do it for you. I can't do everybody's paperwork for them. This ain't that freaking difficult, right? It's deceptive trade practices. Now, if I do one, and when I do one, as soon as I do one, I'll put it online so we can all look at it, and you can use that as your model. But I can't do everybody's form. You're going to have to do your own. But I wish you would. I wish you'd go try it and see what happens. And, then tell me what happened. And we'll figure out how to make it happen to make it work. But, retail installment contract means one thing different than a consumer credit contract does. And because of that, it's deceptive trade practices, because no one actually ever signed a contract with anybody to borrow any money. And it's the exact same on your mortgage. You didn't sign a contract with a bank to borrow any money to buy the house. The bank doesn't sign any papers. It's just the way it is. It's all part of the scheme run by Esquires, who are agents of the devil. Right? So the signs of the devil, Esquires, are found in the details. They were put there by Esquires, errors and omissions. They do it all the time, and everything they do, it doesn't really matter what the situation is, it's done wrong. And it's done wrong intentionally. Right? It's just we're not going to the right place to get relief, which is either going to have to be, a retaliatory strike by the military, and or, using the court that has the power to get done what we need to have done by being smart enough to figure it out without going to war. Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to go to war. There's already enough war. I'm trying to remove this bad apples by, making them have to come and answer into a court that can render a judgment in our favor. Declaratory judgment, right? If you want to watch the system work now, just look at the paper. The paper don't lie, right? It's got all sorts of evidence of their deceit. We just need to take it to the right tribunal to have it adjudicated. That's my belief and the direction I'm going. And if you don't agree, well, I don't really give a shit. I'm doing it anyways. So have a good day. But hey, if you can, please do donate. If you're still watching, donate. PayPal, RobRider, AOL.com. Or send it in the mail. If you can't, hey, I understand. But if I don't ask, people don't necessarily. I'm giving people a chance to exercise their charity, which is most loved by God. Right? So like the virtue number one is charity. So I'll leave it at that. Have a good day. See you now.